Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews on just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Warlock's Tower for the Nintendo Switch. And I've got to be honest, with the massive flood of indie game sales that's going on right now, I have to give a mad shout out to Starizard for recommending this one to me personally, because sometimes these do drop under the radar. But anyway, if you've seen or heard anything about Warlock's Tower, it's definitely a retro GameBoy Style themed puzzle game with elements of both tactics and dungeon crawler. But just because it's a pure logic puzzler doesn't mean it can't have some humor thrown in the mix. The overall story in Warlock's Tower is that the Warlock's Tower itself is basically a giant energy siphon that pulls energy out of the earth and nature and everything around it. And as the Warlock himself feels a little bit traded, he's pretty much ready to do away with the whole world. So the peoples of every nation have made a consolidated effort to let the Warlock know that they don't actually hate him, and have sent Tim the Mailman to be their emissary of goodwill. But while neither rain nor sleet nor snow nor hail would stop a typical postal character, even setting one foot inside the wizard's tower can end your life. As such, every single step in the Warlock's Tower needs to be carefully measured and does make it pretty convenient for the tactics element in the game. Every single floor is divided into multiple rooms, and every single room divided into a grid pattern, which will have you navigating from the entrance to the exit door to make it onto the next room. But as previously mentioned, this is a cursed tower that saps your life with every single step. So starting off in the introductory puzzles, we're introduced to this system of life gems, which will refill Tim the Postman's life gauge by the number written on each gem. However, one thing to keep in mind though is that these don't really stack up, but only replace the prior total with a new total of the new gem. So if you do encounter a life gem with the number 3 on it and then immediately a life gem with the number 5, you won't have a total of 8, but a total of 5. And should you move on to a new gem with the total of 3, you will not have 8, you will have 3. And it's this raw mechanic that sets the general difficulty level and learning curve for the original levels. You'll need to be aware of exactly how many steps it might take to get to a gem and which gems you might encounter before reaching the exit. And in many situations, you may need to make careful calculations in order to make sure that you don't actually path your way into a number that's too low, resulting in your life meter reaching 0 before you reach that exit. But if your life meter ever does reach 0, you'll merely start over at that room's entrance. And while this is certainly a very simple principle for a puzzling game, the developers did realize that the bigger the room, the more difficult to puzzle. And as one of the first character upgrades, they threw the player a bone in the form of a selectable continue. At least for Switch players, pressing the B button will drop a little flag tile anywhere that you currently are in the game, and if you die, you'll start over from that point. But if you do drop the continue in a bad spot, or you just seem like you got too stuck, you can hit X and start the level over at any time. And as you would expect from any puzzle game, the higher you manage to make it in the tower, the more difficult the puzzles become. But that's not necessarily from the rooms getting bigger and the puzzles getting more complicated, but every few rooms or so, the Warlock himself will make an appearance and introduce a new element. Some rooms may be nearly completely obscured by darkness, allowing you to feel your way through, while others might be full of brain-thirsty zombies or acid-trailing slimes. So while the earlier puzzles merely required a player to make the most of their steps, the further you get into the game, you'll also be having to avoid enemies, as well as work with certain obstacles such as Switch-activated gates and even teleporters. There's also a handful of extra characters you can run into throughout the course of your gameplay that I'm assuming are nods to other games, but regardless of whether you're able to accurately place these cameos or not, the first character that you run into will become someone you get really familiar with. Several of the most difficult puzzles in the game require you to switch back and forth between Tim the Postman and this first character that you encounter in order to navigate puzzles in tandem, picking up keys, opening doors, avoiding traps and monsters, and working as a cooperative effort to solve the room. But because you'll both share any of the life points from any of the gems collected between the two of you, navigating both characters at once becomes exponentially more difficult. But in all honesty, because of the ability to set a continue panel down or restart the level at any given time, a lot of potential frustration is quickly abated. And any other potential player frustrations are definitely kept in check by the light, goofy tone of the game, as well as the upbeat and poppy chiptune music. Overall, I'd have to say that Warlock's Tower definitely makes its mark on the puzzling genre by just being so incredibly simple, but also having so much personality. And though all the puzzles are essentially solved with the same puzzle mechanic, none of them actually feel the same once you get past those first few introductory puzzles. That being said though, despite adding new traps and new pitfalls, new characters, and even new environments and scenery, many of the puzzles do feel as though there's only one 100% way to solve it, and that does kind of feel like there's no ability for the player to be creative. But considering that it is such a simple game that's actually meant to be reminiscent of Game Boy era gaming, that simple flaw does seem pretty true to the style, and I can't really hold it against the developer. So all in all, depending on your proclivity for puzzle games and your need for nostalgia, this might be a must-have for certain gamers. And with a price tag sitting pretty far south of the $5 mark, stylized graphics, pretty on-point chiptune music, and a goofy and innovative story, there's really not much someone could complain about. But anyway, that does about wrap up the review of Warlock's Tower, now on the Nintendo Switch. So if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment, show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. As you can see, there are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be something new to find right here. But since I can only cover a couple of game reviews a week, if you want an update at what might be coming out next, you can check the announcements page on our Discord server or look for any hints I might drop on Twitter. And if you really want to help support this channel and really help me make these reviews, I could always use another Patreon. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.